Good afternoon and welcome to Supply Chain Now Radio. We are broadcasting live today from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Scott Luton. I'm your host for today's session. In our webinar today, we're going to be focusing once again on a very hot topic in the supply chain world, that of talent. Our guest speaker today is Jessica Clayton, founder and partner with TalentStream. Jessica will be sharing her biggest lessons learned from the 2018 supply chain talent market. More about Jessica in just a moment, but as always, we're glad to have you with us here today on Supply Chain Now Radio. So let's tackle our ground rules real quick. All attendees will be on mute as we're looking to optimize the audio experience. Now, with that said, let's make it as interactive as possible, so please do submit your questions via the chat toolbar. We'll answer as many as we have time for at the conclusion of today's webinar. Finally, a PDF of today's presentation and the recording will be available in the next few days to each of our attendees. So let's take a minute to recognize our sponsors here on Supply Chain Now Radio. Big thanks to our sponsor, APICS Atlanta, which has been serving the Metro Atlanta community since 1964. APICS Atlanta is a nonprofit industry association dedicated to the supply chain management space. The organization offers membership and professional development, a wide range of education opportunities, industry-leading research and publications, and widely recognized professional certifications. To learn more, visit us at apicsatlanta.org. Special thanks to our sponsor, TalentStream, a WeBank-certified recruiting and staffing firm that specializes in helping organizations find top talent in the engineering, manufacturing, and supply chain space. To learn more, visit us at talentstreamstaffing.com. Okay, so to our audience, you're in for a treat today. Let's share a little bit more information about our speaker. Jessica Clayton is the founding partner of TalentStream and a member of the ownership group. She is a cum laude graduate of Clemson University, go Tigers, with a master's degree from the Citadel. Jessica grew up in the staffing industry and worked for one of the largest national staffing companies before launching TalentStream in 2013. In addition to leading TalentStream's recruiting and operations, Jessica enjoys giving back to the Greenville, South Carolina community and spending time with her husband and 3 children. A former Teacher of the Year in South Carolina, she has served as a volunteer leader at a wide variety of organizations, to include the Ronald McDonald House, Big Brothers Big Sisters of America, and the Red Cross. Jessica serves as chair of career development on the APICS Industrial Crescent Board of Directors and also maintains active professional memberships in Greenville. Jessica is a member of the Christ Church of Greenville, where she serves on the annual giving cabinet as well as the Children's Ministry Committee. With all that said, please join me in welcoming Jessica Clayton.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that warm welcome. And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I think we can all agree that the war for talent is very real, and companies are only as good as their employees. So hiring the right person is extremely important, in front of mind for many executives. I'm excited to talk to you today about some of our observations of the 2018 supply chain talent market and how you can hopefully use those observations to attract the right talent. As we all know, supply chain is growing at a rapid rate across the global marketplace. What was once seen as a buzzword is now an integral part of all organizations, and creating an effective end-to-end supply chain is imperative to a company's success. There are several factors that have contributed to this focus on supply chain. With technology advancements and customer expectations, global business demands have become significantly more complex and difficult to manage. Speaking of customer expectations, I don't know about you, but Santa would not be visiting my children this Christmas if it were not for Amazon. The Amazon effect has influenced everyone's supply chains. Free delivery in 2 days is no longer a perk, it's an expectation. As a consumer myself, I know I have chosen not to buy something because of the 5 to 7 business day shipping method, a mentality that has developed in me over the past 2 years. Retailers are having to find ways to adjust to these heightened customer expectations in order to remain relevant, and supply chain is at the heart of these adjustments. Deloitte published a great article a few years back about the importance of strong supply chain leadership and the ability of companies to overcome and rise above this treacherous landscape. They surveyed more than 400 executives in manufacturing and retail across the globe and found that 79% of organizations with superior supply chain capabilities achieve revenue growth that is significantly above average. On the flip side, only 8% of organizations with lower performing supply chains have above average revenue growth. So I think it is fair to say that there is a direct correlation between supply chain leadership and revenue growth. The success of your business is directly linked to the performance of your supply chain, which sets the stage for what we are here to talk about today, the war for talent in supply chain. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that jobs in logistics are projected to grow 26% from 2010 to 2020. By 2025, 55 to 60 million baby boomers will be leaving the workforce. In a 2017 DHL study, states that more than a third of companies have failed to take steps to create their future talent pipeline or develop their workforce. So with 26% in expected growth and 60 million workers likely at the management or executive level leaving the workforce, there is no doubt that your organization is not already, if your organization is not already feeling this pain, they likely will be in the next 3 to 5 years. I recently ran a report for a new supply chain client in Georgia and found that there are 18,074 job openings in supply chain posted in Georgia across a variety of levels, but only 2,753 active candidates who fall within the supply chain industry, which demonstrates the clear discrepancy between supply and demand in today's job market. So with that said, how can we win this war on talent? What are our clients looking for? What are our candidates looking for? How in the world can we make everyone happy and be a part of that 79% of organizations who experience revenue growth due to superior supply chain capabilities? Let's start with what our clients are looking for. In the past 3 years, we have seen more and more of our clients invest in supply chain talent, especially at the management level. In fact, in the last year, we have placed 13 management level supply chain candidates across a variety of industries. So while every supply chain is different and every client takes a different approach to building out their supply chain, we have observed some common skill sets that our clients are requiring. If you look at a number of studies out there from Supply Chain Insights, DHL, and others, they talk about the evolving skills of supply chain talent. And those skills certainly fall in line with what we are seeing. Our clients want to see candidates who have strategic and critical thinking skills, leaders who can function on a tactical and strategic level. They want people who can bring ideas to the table and who are confident enough that they can offer suggestions. Our candidates are looking for those who have the ability to implement lean and other CI methodologies in order to solve problems. They want to see metrics and data around how candidates have initiated programs or managed projects that have improved cost, speed, efficiency, and quality across the supply chain. Data analysis. I'm sure you have heard quite a bit about that in the last 5 to 10 years. In fact, I recently read an article in Forbes that talked about how analytics continue to revolutionize supply chains, stating that 94% of supply chain leaders say that digital transformation will fundamentally change supply chain in the coming 2 to 3 years. But only 44% of those have a strategy ready. Technology and the ability to use technology. Ability to work effectively in an ERP system. And collaboration ability. We are seeing less and less separation between production and supply chain, and more emphasis on working together in a true end-to-end supply chain, where the plant manager and director of ops is working hand in hand with the director of supply chain. Willingness to learn and advance themselves, people who are invested in professional development. Proven leadership ability. This is definitely a gap that a lot of organizations are looking to fill. Ability to train others and coach hourly employees. So while data analysis that we talked about earlier is extremely important, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to share that data with an hourly employee so that you can make the changes necessary? We are seeing certifications more and more in demand. APICS certifications and others are becoming more of a requirement than a preferred skill set. And lastly, the desire to grow with the company. Somebody who has ambitions and goals and wants to move up within the organization and help the company to grow. So internally, we often liken ourselves to matchmakers. And we all know that any good marriage has two partners. So to get to the altar, we need to ensure that both sides of the equation are happy. And that brings me to what our candidates are looking for. How can you as a company attract the right individuals in this war for talent? And furthermore, once you get them in the door, how do you make sure they do not answer that recruiter's call? So what attracts our candidates to jobs? What we're hearing from candidates is that culture is extremely important. We're hearing more and more that people are looking at the whole package. They want more than just the salary. They want to know they will be heard regardless of their level. They want autonomy and the ability to make decisions and express ideas. They want to feel they are making a difference. They want to be able to see the bottom line effects of their role. This marries well with a lot of what our clients are looking for. Candidates who want to bring ideas to the table, who want to see the data and how their job impacts the bottom line. Growth opportunities. A lot of times this is the motivation for candidates leaving their current role. They want the ability to be promoted and rewarded or recognized for their hard work. They want training and professional development. Companies that encourage their employees to grow by offering opportunities to work on a black belt project or paying for courses or certifications. Again, that recognition for hard work is something that a lot of candidates are looking for. Remote working. If I had $1 for every time I was asked if there was remote working capabilities in this position, I would be sitting on a beach somewhere. Remote work has become increasingly more important, especially for our candidates in the Atlanta area. Sometimes they're looking for maybe just one day remote. Obviously, at the production level, that's not always a possibility, but at some supply chain on the data analysis side, it might be a possibility and could be an added perk for clients. Vacation and other benefits is obviously very important as well. The traditional 2 weeks for new hires is getting challenged all the time. And this is an easy way sometimes for an employer to add an extra benefit and get an edge on the competition. And of course, compensation. At the end of the day, we all work to pay the bills. Most passive candidates are looking for a 10 to 20% increase in salary to make a change. Active candidates who have recently been laid off, or maybe their company has moved, or they don't see that growth opportunity and they're very much actively looking for a new role, they're oftentimes more negotiable and looking for equal pay, a lateral move, or a 10% increase. And we're going to talk a little more about the difference between these passive and active candidates. So that brings us to what to expect in 2019. We do not believe that supply chain is going anywhere. This boom is going to continue, and the importance placed on supply chain is going to continue to grow, which means that the war for talent gets even tougher. As we all know, unemployment is at an all-time low, and it is certainly what we call a candidate's market. In fact, 80% of our placements this year have been passive candidates. Candidates who are currently employed and are not actively pursuing a new opportunity. In most searches, we reach out to an average of 47 to 52 candidates before we get a pre-screen. And pre-screen, an average of 4 candidates before we get a submittal to our client. Depending on the level of position, it takes us anywhere from 3 to 10 candidates to get that placement. Our average submittal to placement ratio this year is 4 to 1. So as you can see, it takes a lot of time to get to that one person who might be interested in making a change. And this certainly changes the way we have to approach recruiting. When we are able to get someone interested, we really have to sell the opportunity for our client. It's really important for us to understand our client's culture and things that are going to entice these candidates, these passive candidates, to make a move. Engaging the passive candidate is simply not enough anymore. We have to convince them that they need to leave their current employer for a better opportunity. So those best practices, those that we spoke about in attracting talent earlier, become extremely important, as is your relationship with your recruiter. So I'm going to switch gears a bit and end with talking about optimizing your recruiter's performance and results. There are a lot of great recruiting firms out there. We are not trying to make this a sales pitch, but we do think that for those of you who are working with outside sources, we've got some tips to best optimize that relationship to get the best results. Because as we all know, once you post a job, you needed that person in there yesterday. And we want to help you, as do other recruiting firms, to get them in the door quickly and to get you the right person. It can be extremely expensive to hire the wrong individual. So many people assume that recruiters have a list of people they can immediately plug into jobs. But in a candidate's market, like we talked about earlier, that is simply not the case. If it was, again, I'd be sitting on a beach somewhere. What we do have is a vast network of qualified professionals that have offered to stay on our radar should timing and opportunity entice them towards their next career promotion. We thought it may be helpful to share some suggestions on how to best work with an external recruiting source. I was recently asked by a client, what can you and your recruiters do that we cannot in regards to finding the right talent? We know the most about our company. We can post the job. What can you do more than us? My answer was simple. We can save you time. In HR, there are fires to put out every day, and time to effectively source and screen candidates can often be diminished by payroll or benefits questions, open enrollment, employee relation, and the list goes on and on and on. Likewise, if you are a hiring manager, hiring is only a small part of your responsibilities. And most plant managers do not have 3 hours a day to dedicate to reaching out to hundreds of candidates to get only 3 on the phone. And posting the job rarely gets the return we saw even 10 years ago. The good candidates, those passive candidates I talked about, are not applying to jobs. They don't have to. Recruiters are calling them every day. So how can this partnership, how can this relationship between outside recruiting sources and end users be successful? It must be a partnership. We start every search at TalentStream with a streamline call with our HR or hiring manager to best understand the job beyond the job description. Of course, if it's a new client, we want to visit the plant. We want to see production. We want to see the office space. We want to understand the culture and those things that sell a job beyond a job description. There are a lot of things that are not listed in job descriptions. Soft skills, again, culture, that team environment that this individual is going to be coming into. So giving this time to the recruiter on the front end saves a lot of time on the back end, reviewing resumes that do not fit the bill. It also allows the recruiter to get you the best candidates much quicker because we're zeroing in on those non-negotiables, the things that you absolutely need that person to possess as they walk through your door. Feedback, feedback, feedback. I cannot stress this one enough. Our clients who provide detailed and quick feedback on resumes and interviews allow us to move faster, make necessary changes, and keep strong candidates engaged in our process. This is probably the biggest obstacle to our success for our clients. Interviews. Candidates want to feel wanted. Just as you are interviewing the candidate is interviewing you and the company. Setting aside time for interviews and moving quickly if you like a candidate not only makes the candidate, who may not even be looking for a new opportunity in the first place, but was convinced by the recruiter that this was a good opportunity, it makes them feel wanted, but also allows you to get the candidate in the door before your competition. And lastly, setting up your offer to succeed. It's a very competitive market out there. And one of the benefits we see in working with a recruiter is that brokering of the offer. It benefits both clients and candidates to have a mediator handling the offer negotiations. No one wants to start their job with the sense that there was a winner and a loser at the bargaining table. A good recruiter knows how to broker a sensible compromise, should there be any misalignment of terms. TalentStream makes every effort to mitigate this activity on the front end by presenting a candidate's comp expectations for the role in our pre-screen write-up. This gives the client a front-end review of what the candidate will accept, and on the same token, we discuss salary expectations with candidates and advise them on what is a reasonable target based on skill set, current comp, and other contributing factors. So with all of that said, Scott, at this point, I think we were going to take some questions and have a little Q&A session, so I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Jessica. And let's move forward one slide so that folks will have your contact information. I know Jessica welcomes any calls to compare notes and serve as a resource for excuse me, our attendees. Our first question comes from Randall. And Randall asks, Jessica, can you define the candidate's expectation of remote working?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I think it varies, obviously, on the job and what the expectations are. If they're in a leadership role and need hands-on leadership within the organization, that might not be an option. But I think that what people are looking for is to be able to spend less time in the car and more time effectively working. So we have some clients who offer a flex work schedule. That could be one, option in remote work where they come into the office 3 days a week and are able to work from home 2 days a week. We have some that have flex times as far as coming into the office and leaving the office in order to avoid that traffic. So I think, again, it kind of depends on the expectations for that role, but also certainly any type of remote work that is offered attracts candidates quite a bit. So if we're able to say that there's an option to work from home 2 days a week, we can typically get candidates more engaged. I hope that answered that.
Great question, Randall. Big topic of interest for candidates. And Jessica, thanks for sharing some perspective there. Our next question, and again, to our audience, I've got 12:23. One of the best parts about our webinars is having a good, robust Q&A session. So Jessica has very intentionally carved out and left a good chunk of time to take your questions. So please do submit them via the chat toolbar, and we'll pose those to Jessica as they come in. All right, so Jessica, our next question comes from Jose, and he asks, you indicated the importance of certifications. What about formal education like masters in supply chain management? Do you see the market now asking for this type of credential?
Great question, Jose, and absolutely appreciate that. We are seeing more and more colleges offering supply chain management as a major, but that's not something that has been offered at a variety of universities for very long. So We do certainly run across clients that are immediately asking for that degree, and we have to kind of walk through, that operations management might have been with a focus in supply chain, might be more of the degree that, they may come across. We have to give a little bit of education on that side and how long those degrees have been offered. But definitely gives our candidates a leg up if they do have that focus on the supply chain side. And we are seeing more and more of our clients who are obtaining their masters now that they are offered in supply chain management, which gives them a leg up on the competition. And also really teaches some of those evolving skill sets that we talked about at the beginning. A supply chain manager today looks very different than a supply chain manager 10 years ago. And the capabilities of using those lean and CI methodologies across the supply chain is becoming a requirement. And a lot of that, is focused on in that supply chain management degree. So certainly a combination of the degree and then those certifications as well. I think they are getting a lot more notoriety, and they are hard to obtain, as any of you who have sat down for all the modules and taken the test for those APICS certifications can attest to. They are certainly are respected in the marketplace and add to that education.
Terrific. Great question, Jose. And Jessica, appreciate you sharing some perspective there. Jessica, you mentioned APICS, and Felix has a question about APICS, so perfect timing. And to the audience, Jessica has been volunteering with the APICS Industrial Crescent chapter for several years now, mainly in the career development aspect. So Felix asks us, Jessica, tell us about your involvement in APICS and where do you specifically see value?
Great question. There is a lot of value in APICS. I would say two things, though, if I am really thinking about where I find value. One is there are a lot of opportunities where I get to give back to the industry that we serve. We have participated in Supply Chain 101 with elementary age children going into elementary schools and getting to plant that early seed of supply chain. It is amazing to see their little eyes light up when they start to make the connection of what goes into the shoes they love, or the cars they ride to school in, or lemonade. There's a whole lemonade project that we do, and making those connections also with what their parents might do that contributes to the supply chain. So a neat opportunity to plant that seed early, hopefully develop some great candidates for us in 10 to 15 years. But definitely giving back to the industry we serve is one thing that I find a lot of value in with APICS. The other is it's a great learning opportunity. I have a background in education. I taught high school for 10 years and went into staffing and loved staffing. And it was mostly on the manufacturing and logistics side, but I don't have a supply chain management degree. And I don't, that this opportunity with APICS and going to the PDMs and sitting in on webinars allows me to better understand trends in supply chain, to better understand the skills that are necessary for an effective supply chain, and overall to make me better at my job, to better recruit candidates and really drill down to a candidate's true skill set and, look past the keywords and be able to ask the right questions so that at the end of the day, we can serve our clients the best.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. Great question, Felix. You will find no shortage of love for APICS on our team over here at TalentStream and Supply Chain Now Radio for that matter. The next question will come from Steve, and Steve asks, Jessica, what do you see as an average length of tenure before changing jobs?
Very good question, and that also depends on the generation. That is something that we are discussing very regularly here at TalentStream, and in order to best prep our clients. For a long time, longevity at a job was the norm. People stayed until they got the gold watch and they retired with the same company. 10 to 15 years was very normal. That is changing immensely in today's marketplace. I think some of it has to do with this candidates market that we spoke about, and strong candidates, people who really know what they're doing, they are getting calls left and right from recruiters. And with the world of social media, we're able to get to them in ways as recruiters that we were not able to in the past. So they are enticed and they might leave a position. Also, the newer generation, the younger workforce, they are always looking for learning opportunities. And that's something that I think is, in retaining talent, is very important to recognize. Because if they see that they are going to learn something at another company that they're not learning at their, or adding to their skill set at their current role, they are more likely to jump ship. The adventure has been important. Being able to see, travel, see different areas. I know I was at a meeting recently and was talking to a CEO of a pretty large organization who mentioned a rotational program that they've started and seen a lot of success with in their millennial workforce. And they are getting to go to different locations for 2 to 3 years and learn different roles within the organization. And they're able to retain that talent, but give them that, feeling of that professional development and adding to their skill set. So average tenure, I know the first thing that most of our clients say when we say, what are your non-negotiables, is I don't want a job hopper. So they are looking for, at least 5-6 years at a employer. They're looking for growth within those 5 to 6 years. But, I do think that the definition of average tenure is changing, and it's evolving quite a bit with this market. And it's something that we have to consider as employers and recruiters as well. Before, when we wouldn't call somebody if they had a 2-year stint because that worried us about them, now we can, we do call and we learn why that was a 2-year stint and try to, determine and further vet out if they are committed to their next opportunity. In addition to that, I guess one other point that kind of, corresponds with this is a lot of times, if you look at a resume anywhere between 2007 and 2009, 2010, you're going to see a lot of short stints, and you're going to see a lot of, people who've been laid off. So we typically advise to kind of ignore those years because of obviously the economy at that time.
Great question, Steve. And a quick follow-up to that, Jessica, and you kind of touched on it towards the latter part of your answer. How do you, the why behind a bunch of stints? What do you hear from clients when they're really wanting to understand a very logical and a common sense reason for, if you do see a lot of stints on particular candidates?
That's a great question. And, there's a few different reasons. Obviously, if you have somebody who has worked contract a majority of their career, they're going to have short stints. And sometimes they don't even put that on their resume that they were contract roles. We have a lot of candidates who that contract lifestyle was great for 10 years, but they're ready to settle down and contribute to, one organization. So if they can really convince us of that, we speak to most of these candidates that we talk to. I would say our average time in a pre-screen was 45 minutes. So we really get to drill down on what they're looking for in that next role and assess, why they left these positions or what has happened. You do have candidates who've had some bad luck, certainly. But for the most part, if they have longevity in most of their positions, and they have 1 or 2 jobs that maybe has a short stint, and they can provide us with an adequate reason why, we feel comfortable enough to explain that to the client. We've all probably at some point in our career had a job that didn't work out, and for one reason or another. And we don't want to minimize their ability to contribute moving forward, especially if we get the sense that they truly are committed to their next opportunity.
Jessica, would you say, and sorry, I'm going to continue down this line here because I know this is something that we talk about daily with clients, but the risk of losing out on a great candidate, if would you say if we dial in too much on length of tenure at this position and this position and the next position, you could lose out? Would you say we could lose out on some great candidates if we put the blinders on too much there, right?
Absolutely. I think it's extremely important to look at their skill set. Now, certainly, if somebody has 2-year stints at every job they've had over the past 20 years, likely we're not even going to call them. The focus should be on the skill sets. Longevity is important, but every hire, you are running the risk, and this isn't something that everybody likes to hear, certainly not something that we love about the fact that our product is people. But with every hire, you're running the risk that in 5 to 6 to 7 years, they're going to make a change. And so I think that brings us back to that fact that attracting the talent, very important, and it's a competitive market out there. But what are you going to do to retain that talent? I talked about earlier some of the things that candidates are looking for, and it's not just salary. So there's a lot that companies can do that's not a lot of cost to them to retain that talent around their culture and caring about their employees, listening to their employees, allowing employees the ability to speak up. And then those growth opportunities that we talked about, that is definitely not just that you are recognizing people for their work, but there's a plan laid out in that the employee is aware of that plan to grow. So as I mentioned, that's something that is the motivation for a lot of candidates that we speak to when we say, okay, why are you considering making a change? Why did you answer my call? They will tell us, well, there's just no room for growth here. And there might very well be room for growth there. It has just not been communicated to them. So I think we focus on the skill set. And if they have the right skill set and they culturally fit within your organization and they have a few short stints, to take those blinders off. But then once you get them in the door, to do everything you can to retain that talent, that professional development, the growth opportunities, laying that out there, letting them know what the next step is if they meet their KPIs, those types of things are going to, retain that talent better.
Perfect. And that tees us up for the next question from Steve in just a second. But Jessica, a lot of what I heard there, 2 big points that you shared is don't put the blinders on. Really, with each candidate, you want to look at the entire candidacy, that whole body of evidence, so that you're making a good, well-rounded decision. And then secondly, you touched on the importance of the you got to attract the talent, you got to develop it so that you can retain it. So not just thinking start and stop with getting the talent in the door, but really attract, develop, retain. The importance of that well-rounded approach to managing talent, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So next question comes from Steve as well. And Steve, thanks for the last question. Great perspective from Jessica there. So Steve says, I tell my students that one part of the litmus test for a company is their interest in supporting continuous education and certification achievement. How do you see this evolving with companies these days?
Great question. So let me make sure I understand that.
So basically, how do you see companies, what level of support are you seeing companies really commit to when it comes to supporting candidates and new employees, continuous improvement and certification achievement. Steve says also, basically, what's their commitment level these days to employee development?
Great. And something that, again, is a motivation for leaving a current employer. So plays in very well to that last question. We, the clients who I think are able to retain that talent and the ones, we're checking in all the time with the candidates that we've placed, because we want to know, we want to hear that they're happy. We want, it helps us in recruiting another candidate for that client. We can tell them, hey, we've got, we placed the plant manager there and he loves it there. And we're asking questions. What is it that you love about this company? And the ones who do allow for that professional development and who invest in their employees, we're hearing more and more positive feedback. And that's really on two levels. One is, and I mentioned this earlier, the ability or opportunity to do a black belt project, for instance. A lot of times what we're hearing from candidates is that their current employer, they've gone through all of the training, they've gotten to that point, and their current employer is saying, we just don't have the time for that project. And what that's communicating to our candidate is, we just don't care about your development, whether that's what they're meaning to or not. And we all know that in manufacturing, time is everything. But that ability to do the black belt project. And then also those companies who, one of the benefits, in their package is to pay for education, not just at a collegiate level in advancing their education, but in some of those certifications. We've had a candidate that I recently checked in with at a manufacturer who said, you won't believe this, but they're paying for me to get my CAD certification. Now, he was on the supply chain side, and he just wanted to advance that skill set. And it didn't directly relate to his job, but he was so excited because he's finding ways that he can partner more with production through getting this CAD certification. And that they took the time to invest for him to do that. He's doing it online. He can do it without affecting his job. But he really saw value in that his employer was offering that for him.
So we're getting a lot of questions that come in, which we expected with topics like talent or leadership or some of the others. So I'm glad we carved out a lot of time here at the end for some Q&A. So great follow-up questions, Steve and Jessica. Thanks for sharing. Jerome has an interesting question, kind of on a different angle of the recruiting world. So he asked, would you share some thoughts around retained search versus contingent search?
Absolutely. And that is something comes at a good time. We actually just wrapped up a successful retained search with one of the world's leading automotive companies. And with that said, though, majority of our searches are contingent. So to give just a little, for those of you who might not understand that lingo, a retained search, the client is going to pay us on a monthly basis, a set amount, a fee to keep us on retainer to provide candidates. And then there's different ways in the end result, as far as if we do find the right talent, typically there is then a flat fee or a reduced fee to offset that retained retainer that is paid monthly. And then contingent search, which again is majority of our searches right now, is we only are paid if we find the talent. And we only send an invoice on the first day of their work. So with that said, the difference in my thoughts around them, obviously there's a lot of benefits on a retained search, and really to both sides. On the retained search, the client is paying up front for bandwidth. There is that dedicated commitment, that skin in the game, and it really serves as a motivator for our recruiters. They know that, if they're retaining us, they are committed to that hire. They're not just fielding resumes. They're going to get us feedback quickly because, that retainer is kind of putting that skin in the game. On the contingent side, we put a lot of resources and time on the front end to source the candidates and to post the job. And we're not always guaranteed a payment. But with that said, the difference there, that we see primarily in the relationship, in the partnership that I spoke about earlier, is that on the retained side, we're able to get to the talent faster because we're getting the feedback faster. They've got skin in the game. They're paying us a check every single month, so they want to get back to us so that they can get somebody in the door. On the contingent side, it makes that feedback even more important. We have to constantly evaluate the jobs that are on our board weekly to determine if we're getting the feedback, if we are, keep arranging interviews, if we're getting feedback on the interviews, and if we're going to make that placement, because we're putting that time and resource, we're paying our recruiters to recruit. We're, investing in job boards. We are investing in resume databases. We are spending a lot of time, and we want to make sure that, it just puts more emphasis on that feedback and on that partnership in a contingent search to be successful. And we have plenty of successful contingent searches. I think, both ways have pros and cons, but that would be kind of my thoughts on the difference between the two is, maybe that partnership level and the commitment in that partnership level between the end user and us.
All right. Great question, Jerome. And Jessica, thanks for sharing more here. We're going to wrap up with one final question from Kaya. And Kaya asked Jessica, can you comment on how the market varies for older seekers versus younger seekers? Looks like we're gonna wrap up on a dynamite question here, Jessica.
Yes. Very. That's a great question, and something that I know is a concern to a lot of the more experienced workforce. And I would be lying if I were to say that it is, that there's no variance. There is, certainly. And a lot of that comes for different reasons. Everybody wants somebody with 5 to 7 years experience. I can't tell you how many times we start off a streamline call and they say, we'd really like to target those candidates with 5 to 7 years experience. Well, everybody wants to target those candidates with 5 to 7 years experience. And most of the time, honestly, those candidates, they're right at the time where they're looking at a promotion at their current employer, if they do have that growth opportunity. So they may be a little more hesitant to move, whereas your newer grads, people who maybe have been in there for 3 years and there is not a growth opportunity, or those, more seasoned workers who have seen a variety of industries, they might be more readily available. And one of the things that I often have this conversation with our clients. You obviously cannot discriminate on age, and none of our clients do, but when they're looking for years experience, one of the things that you want to consider is, we talked about this earlier, the average tenure at a job is, 5 to 7 years now, maybe, at current roles, and that's shortening and shortening. So you're not guaranteed when you hire somebody that they're going to be with you for 20 years. So it's really good to look at, as a hire, as the company hiring, to look at, what do you need right now? What do you need for the next 5 to 7 years? Can this candidate, do they have the skill sets, to accomplish those goals and to contribute to that growth? and then work again to retain them. But, can they do that in the time that you have planned out for those goals? So the last thing I would say too is that the more skills you have and the higher level you are, and the more that you're making comp-wise, it does make it more difficult to find a job. When we get a director of supply chain role, we are going to have less candidates to reach out to that really have that skill set. Whereas if we get a junior procurement or a supply chain even manager, there seems to be more of a pool of candidates there. So, as your skill sets develop, you're definitely more marketable, but at the same time, those jobs don't come open as often. A director of supply chain does not come open as often as a supply chain manager or, a junior buyer or even senior buyer. Hope that answered. I know that kind of looked at both sides of the equation from the candidate and the client.
Yep. And Kaya, thank you for that question. And again, to all of, Kaya and Steve and Darla and Felix and Jerome and Jose, I believe, Jessica, we put her contact information there. She's happy to compare notes and answer in fuller sound bites any of the questions that y'all might have. It's tough to tackle these sometimes in a 2-minute segment here. So for our listeners, as we wrap up Q&A here, I think two things that Jessica mentioned both in part of her presentation and certainly big common themes through the Q&A was, regardless if you're working with internal talent acquisition teams, which certainly companies have been investing in, or if you're working with external recruiting teams, or if you're considering to work with external teams, whatever it is, there's two big ways that you can help them help you. First off, that Jessica mentioned is make sure you don't mail in the job description. Make sure you take time to really think about that. Don't break out the one from 7 years ago and reuse it that Jessica and we see so often. Take some time, make sure that captures and is updated and relevant. And then secondly, as Jessica mentioned, feedback. Give your internal talent acquisition team or your external recruiting partner as much feedback, actionable feedback as you can. That's going to be the lifeblood of the search, and that's what's going to let them make as much progress as quickly as possible. Jessica, any final comments there as we wrap up Q&A?
No, I'll just reinforce, that feedback. A lot of people ask us what we're looking for in feedback. We don't need a detailed analysis of the resume, but a simple why they weren't a fit or why they were a fit allows us to just hone in on those better candidates and to get to them quicker, which, we all want to do. That's
right. Speed is the name of the game. Well, big thanks. One final editorial note is Jessica mentioned the Supply Chain 101 program that several APICS chapters have been involved in, and it's been a wonderful way of engaging elementary students. And we should give a big shout out to Cheryl Dawson, formerly with Intel, and I know she's done a good bit of work with APICS, the corporate organization, and really it started with her bringing together a team of volunteers to develop all of that curriculum. Cheryl developed a curriculum for the elementary school level, the middle school level, and the high school level, and that her curriculum is what has enabled us to here in South Carolina and in Georgia to engage and plant those seeds of awareness that Jessica spoke about. So thanks for bringing that up, and Cheryl, big high five to you for all of your great work there. Okay. So that concludes our Q&A session. Really, Jessica, I love how you carved out a good bit of time and really, made yourself available for our audience today. A lot of good questions, and we probably are cutting a few off, but that's okay. We'll follow up with those folks. Big thanks to our participants. Great questions. We're going to wrap up the session today on a few final items. First off, Supply Chain Now Radio. As many of you may know, we rolled out a text to subscribe feature for our webinar programming. So if you're a regular attendee for our webinars, no need to continue to register on a one-off basis. To be auto-enrolled for all of our webinars, text supply chain to 42828, and we'll take it from there. That might make your life a little easier, and that's certainly one of the things that we're that one of our goals here at Supply Chain Now Radio. Secondly, and we'll flip to the last slide here, we'd invite our audience to join us for one of our upcoming webinars and podcasts. We've got several intriguing sessions on the docket. Love Jessica's session here today on talent. We probably don't talk enough about talent on Supply Chain Now Radio. We look to change that in 2019. But immediately tomorrow, December 12th, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be discussing peak season, the dirty P word, peak season and its impact on supply chain with Eric Lamphere of Manhattan Associates. As we all know, probably many folks that are dialed in today, we're in the trenches fighting the war, fighting through the peak season, through the holidays and whatnot. And of course, that's when supply chain steps up to the table and makes it happen. So join us tomorrow for our live podcast at 10:30 Eastern Time. Thursday, December 13th, we've got a busy week this week. We're going to be featuring Will Haraway with Backbeat Marketing as he shares best practices around improving your storytelling and improving your supply chain marketing performance. So join us for that. And in our first webinar of 2019, we're going to be featuring Rusty Wiley with Team One Logistics on January 17th as he shares tips on improving your sales execution in the current technology area. So find out more information on all of that at our website, supplychainnowradio.com. One other note, mark your calendars for those of you in the Metro Atlanta area. APICS Atlanta, CSCMP Atlanta Roundtable, and the Metro Atlanta Chamber have partnered to roll out and introduce the 2019 Atlanta Supply Chain Awards. We're all partnering to recognize the best and the brightest in supply chain in the hashtag Supply Chain City. So save the date, March 12th, 2019. Currently, nominations and sponsorships are available. And you can learn more at the aptly named Atlanta Supply Chain Awards.com. If you see anything on there that you've got questions around, shoot us a note to evp@apicsatlanta.org. And on that note, if you heard anything today that you'd like to learn more information on, you can reach out to me at evp@apicsatlanta.org, and we're happy to serve as a resource for you. Okay, Jessica, one final question for you before we conclude today's session. Any final thoughts on your end?
Well, I'd just like to start definitely by just telling everybody I really appreciate your time today and hope you found some of this information helpful. The one thing I would challenge each of you to do is to sit down and evaluate your recruiting strategy, especially as we go into a new year. Are you recruiting like it's 1987 or for that matter 2008? Or are you recruiting like it's 2020 in a candidate's market? Hopefully some of the stuff that I shared today will allow you to not only attract that talent, but also retain that talent. And of course, as Scott mentioned, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. I'm always happy to compare notes or be a resource if I can.
Perfect. What a great session today, Jessica. As we wrap up, we'd like to give big thanks to our guest speaker, Jessica Clayton, with TalentStream and with APICS Industrial Crescent Chapter for this helpful presentation and all of our valuable insight. Special thanks to our sponsors, APICS Atlanta and TalentStream. Of course, a big thank you to our audience for participating. On behalf of Supply Chain Now Radio, this is Scott Luton concluding today's episode. On behalf of our entire team, we'd like to wish you and your families a wonderful holiday season and a very Merry Christmas. And we hope to reconnect with you again real soon. Thanks, everybody.